How many of you have been to Olive Garden? How many of you have had their Zuppa Toscana soup? It's a traditional Italian soup. It's generally made with sausage, heavy cream, potatoes, and kale. And we are going to do kind of a version of that today, but a little bit lightened up and a little bit healthier. We're gonna start out, I actually started out browning up some, instead of pork sausage that has a lot of fat, I actually used this Italian chicken sausage. You could use turkey sausage, you could use veggie sausage. I just kind of cooked that up beforehand, removed it to a plate, and now we're gonna just heat up kind of a healthy portion of olive oil in here, and we're gonna cook some more of our veggies. Now, I always like to take a traditional recipe and add way more veggies than the recipe calls for, way more. And try and cut back on the fat and calories when I can as well. Because anything that we make at home is probably going to be lower in fat, lower in calories, lower in sugar, and better for us than something that you could buy out. We have control, right? We have control of what's going in there. And a lot of times we can make it taste just as delicious as the restaurant. So I've got my olive oil heating up here. We're gonna start with an onion, okay? So I want to show you guys just how I cube up an onion here. So I did half already. I've got half right here. It's peeled. It's cut from root end to root end. I left one root end still on here. I'm gonna hold the root end and just do some vertical cuts this way, or horizontal cuts, I mean. 2 of them. And then I'm gonna do some cuts this way along the lines of the onion, almost to the root end, but not all the way to the root end. Okay, so technically our onion is still mostly held together, okay? Then the final portion is we're gonna go back this way. So we went this way, now this way, and that's when it comes off in perfectly even little chunks of onion, okay? So this is the best way to help kind of preserve most of your onion. Then you get rid of that root end right there. But your pieces are mostly even, and so they cook evenly. So we're just gonna add that to our warming olive oil. You wanna hear that sizzle. Because when we add food to cold oil, it just soaks up the cold oil. We want it to have that impact with the hot oil, and it immediately starts the cooking process. Okay, so we got our white onion in there. I'm also adding a carrot, which is really not traditional, but I like to add a lot of vegetables. So I buy the multicolored carrots from Trader Joe's or from Fred Meyer. So they taste like regular carrots, but they just are different colors. Like this one's yellow and this one's purple, but they taste the same. So no problem there. I'm gonna add that in. So I usually just cut it into rounds, and then at the fatter part, I might cut it in half. And then flat side down always. If you cut it on this side, it'll rock back and forth. So when you're cutting celery or onions or carrots, bell pepper, you always want to go flat side down so you have more stability. Okay, so let's get that cooking up there. Of course, we're gonna add lots of garlic because that gives a lot of good flavor and is very traditional for Italian food. Okay. Okay, so got some more of our garlic here. Now, I have a lot of people ask me, you know, is the jarred garlic okay? Now, okay, is it fine? Yeah. But are you gonna get the same flavor from jarred garlic as you are from fresh garlic? Absolutely not. That garlic has been sitting there for who knows how long, and it just doesn't have the same pungency and the same kind of health impact that fresh garlic does. And it's way more expensive. And then one of the pretty traditional ingredients in Zuppa Toscana is potatoes. So we're gonna add some potatoes. I'm using Yukon Gold potatoes. I like the flavor really well of Yukon Gold potatoes, and they cook really nicely. And a little bit goes a long way. You could just use a few potatoes and it really gives you that same flavor as using a ton of potatoes. Also, I don't know if you guys have had potato soups before that are really thick and creamy and heavy. Okay, this is not that. Okay, this is mostly a broth-based soup with just a tiny hint of cream. No thickener, no flour, no butter, nothing that makes that kind of heavy that you kind of get with chowders and things like that. When you make soups like that, they generally have a lot more calories and fat and flavor, but we're hoping to get that same flavor but without all of the calories and fat that would normally go into chowder-based soups. Okay, so you'll notice we're not making like a roux with flour and butter and stuff. We're just kind of sauteing our veggies and then we're building on the flavors there. So, we're gonna give this a little stir. At this point, you can add any like fresh herbs or dried herbs that you like Italian seasoning or oregano. So I'm using just a little bit of kosher salt. Okay. And the reason I like to use kosher salt is because to me it has better flavor than table salt. And you can use less for more flavor. Honestly, Himalayan pink salt or rock salt or sea salt or kosher salt, it's all the same amount of sodium. Okay? So don't think you're doing yourself a huge favor by using some fancy salt. It's still going to be the same amount of sodium. Okay? And still wanting to limit that as much as possible. When you add spices, you do want to add it to the hot pan before you add the moisture of the broth. If you add the broth and then you're dumping in a bunch of spices, like in a chili, like chili powder or cumin or Italian herbs or something like that, those spices are just going to kind of clump together and they're not going to be able to hit that hot oil and release more of their flavor. Okay? So you want to do it before when you have this kind of hot oil in this hot pan. The technical term is called blooming. It's called blooming your spices to help more of the flavor and the natural oils and the spices come out. Okay, now we're gonna add our potatoes. So like I said, I have some Yukon Gold potatoes over here. We're just gonna add those in. And I had one that I didn't chop. So I usually just cut it into slabs, flat side down, and into small cubes. Now I'm cutting the cubes relatively small just so that they cook a little faster today, so that we're not waiting all day. So small little cubes, kind of get it coated in that, in all the good veggies in there. And then we're gonna add the vegetable broth, cover our pot, and let the potatoes simmer so that they can cook through. And this is what's called Tuscan kale. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this at the store before. There's also like curly kale, and that's the one that looks really curly and it's kind of tough and chewy. This one's also kind of tough and chewy, but it's a more flat leaf. It's not as curly. I actually think that it's much easier to cut. And so that's the type of kale we are going to use today. That's pretty traditional. This is an Italian soup. Perfect. So the finishing touch on our Zuppa Toscana is the kale, and then we're gonna add the sausage back in, and then we're also just going to add a little bit of half and half. Okay, so in traditional recipes it would probably call for heavy cream. I'm lightening it up just a little bit by using just about a half a cup of half and half versus like 2 cups of heavy cream, which would add quite a bit of fat and calories here. So just a little bit, lighten it up a little bit, and then that's gonna be that soup. Okay, Then we are going to add our kale.